Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to the iPad Podcast. This is Lex at Mac's Future, and today is October 16th, 2012, and this is episode 112, and thanks for listening to the iPad Podcast. This is a commercial-free, chit-chat-free podcast all about iPad, iPad apps, iPad news, iPad devices. And so you can help support this podcast by going into iTunes and giving it a positive review. That'll help other people find this podcast. And I guess it's been more than a week since we've done this podcast, so there's a lot of really interesting news. And so let's get to it. This is the iPad Podcast. Okay, so the big news this Tuesday, October 16th, is that Apple has officially announced that there's going to be a special event next Tuesday, October 23rd, in San Jose, I guess very close to its headquarters. And everyone expects that this is going to be the big announcement. And they sent out invitations today, I guess by email, and the loopinsight.com, Jim Dalrymple, he reported that he got an invitation, and the invitation is, there's a picture of it here if you're looking at this, and the invitation is, it's always a little cryptic. Here the invitation says, "We've got a little more to show you." Apple basically sends invites to the press or to bloggers who are invited to come to the event. And it's a picture of like a white Apple graphic with a colored background. And, the tagline is, like I said, "We've got a little more to show you." So everybody believes that this is the iPad mini that's going to be announced. And, there's been all sorts of leaks that the iPad mini is being made. And there's also leaks of other devices coming out, like the Retina MacBook Pro 13-inch. There's a Retina display MacBook Pro 15-inch, and there's a rumor that Apple will release a smaller MacBook Pro that has a Retina screen. Also, there's rumors that maybe a Mac Mini or a 21-inch iMac that has a slimmer design is coming out. But the big news is that there's finally going to be a smaller iPad, and this is huge, I think, because the market for tablets is heating up, and there's a lot of interest by competitors in the smaller form factor for tablets. Of course, Google came out with the Nexus tablet this summer, and then Amazon updated its Kindle Fire, and it has like a high-definition Kindle Fire. And who else do we have in the game? Well, Microsoft is coming out with its Surface tablets, and so Apple, I think, is seeking to expand its pool of iPads, and the mini iPad, a lot of people believe, is going to be about a little under 8 inches in diameter. The current iPad is a little under, I think, 10 inches in diameter. And just a couple of inches off will really make a difference. The big difference is going to be, I think, in weight. Because I think what makes the current third-generation iPad a challenge for some people, one of the factors is its weight and heft, because the third-generation iPad is heavier than the second-generation iPad. And weight makes a difference in a tablet. Like I have, you can't really hold the third-generation iPad in just one hand. You'll get tired. I have one right here, and it has the smart case, and I can hold it with my hand in one hand, but I can't hold it for a long time. Like if I'm standing on the subway or just standing somewhere, you can't really just sort of hold it with one hand. So like even if you're reading in bed and you're reading something, and if you go to horizontal mode, that's also tough to just hold in one hand. After a while, you get tired. So I think that's one of the reasons Apple's going to make this iPad mini is its weight, because if you make it only 8 inches or less in diameter, you can make it seriously lighter. And I think that's going to be a big selling point. Price is another thing, because if you make it smaller, you can lower the price. And what do I think the price is going to be? I think they're not going to go lower than $300 for the entry-level iPad mini. Now, what's interesting is that the new iPod Touches, which are fantastic, they start at $299 for a 32 gigabyte model. And so the question is, it would be weird, I think, to have an iPad mini start at a price that's cheaper than the newest iPod, right? iPod Touch. That would be a little weird. But I do think they could get away with pricing the entry-level iPad mini at the same price as the entry-level iPod, $299. Now, the thing is, some of the competition, like the Nexus or some of the Kindles out there, they go down even $200 in price. So I don't think Apple's going to go down that far because Apple likes to make a hefty 30 to 40% profit on its profit margin. So my guess is that the entry-level iPad mini will be 16 gigabytes, maybe even 8 gigabytes, but I think 16 is more likely. And starting at $299, and it'll have both a Wi-Fi version and an LTE data version. So it'll be interesting. I bet you the price ranges from I don't know, $300 to $650 or something like that. And to some extent, it will cannibalize the current iPads. On the other hand, I think there's a lot of people who, for price reasons, can't get an iPad because, you know, the cheapest one is maybe a second generation iPad for $400, and iPad 3 entry level is $500. But there are people who would be willing to maybe spend $300 for an iPad. And then remember that at some point there's going to be refurbished iPads, and they'll probably sell for $250 or $240. So it's going to allow Apple to get into a lower end of the market and reach more consumers and be more of a competitor in that space with Amazon and with Google and even with Microsoft. So that event's going to be, I think it's at 10 a.m. Pacific time next Tuesday, the 23rd, which will be 1 p.m. Eastern time on that date. So it's going to be very exciting. I think this is going to help Apple in the coming quarter. I think the coming quarter, the first quarter of the new fiscal year is going to be very profitable for Apple. That's my guess, because between the iPhone 5 and the new iPad mini, I think you're going to see a lot of devices sold. So it's pretty exciting. Okay, so now what's going to happen at this event? Now, MacRumors is a very good website that has information. Last week reported, based on something they saw, that Next Web reported that the rumored the iPad mini event will heavily focus on iBooks. And it says in a post that MacRumors had on, let's see, what was it, on October 12th, they wrote that the event will have a heavy focus on iBooks. The mini event will be aimed at smaller tablets like the Kindle Fire that are generally used to consume content, including books and movies. MacRumors then added that they've heard from multiple sources that Apple's as yet unannounced iPad mini event will have a strong focus on iBooks. It says here that in an email that Eddie Q wrote that was released in the Apple-Samsung trial, that he, quote, found email books, Facebook, and video very compelling on a 7-inch Samsung Galaxy tablet. So I don't think it would be surprising if Apple invites a lot of publishers and is an announcement of a lot more content to iBooks. I think there was also a rumor that Apple's going to update iBooks Author, the authoring tool for iBooks, to a more advanced version to create content that might also be announced that day on the 23rd. So it should be interesting. I do think you could see a lot of stuff relating to ebooks and other content for the iPad Mini. Now, the website Apple Insider on October 16th, which is, I guess, today, revealed that it has an exclusive that the iPad Mini part numbers reveal that Apple plans 12 configurations in 2 colors. This is an article written by a guy named Neil Hughes. He said they got some sort of leak of a stock keeping or SKUs, and which show a total of 24 varieties. And let's see, where did they get the leak from this? So I guess they got it from someone they claim to be a person familiar with the inventory. And there are 4 different models will be offered, described as P101, P103, P105, and P107. And so Apple Insider is suggesting that the lineup suggests that Apple plans to introduce an 8 gigabyte model that would serve as an entry-level model for the lower-priced iPad. And what else did they say? They say each of the 4 different product descriptions also come with 3 different distinctions: good, better, and best, which could signify Wi-Fi only 3G and 4G LTE models. And it says here each model is also available in A and B variants, which likely identify color options of black and white. It also says here, one person familiar with Apple's product inventory said the company's initial shipments suggest availability of the presumed entry-level P10 model will be the greatest at launch. And it goes on to say an inventory list that surfaced from a retailer last week and suggested an entry-level 8 gigabyte model could cost around $249. So that's pretty interesting. So it's interesting because if there's 12, okay, black and white, that would make 6. And so then you have 6 white models, let's say. And then you have, if it came in 3 sizes, then you would have 2 for each size. I think they're going to have just one be like Wi-Fi and one Wi-Fi and 3G and LTE. So that makes sense because you would have 3 model sizes that are either Wi-Fi only or Wi-Fi and LTE data, and you would have 3 sizes. So the question is, what are the sizes going to be? I mean, they're suggesting 8 gigabytes for the low-end one. Then is the high-end one only going to be 32 gigabytes? That could be one way to differentiate it from the full version iPad, which the high end is 64 gigabytes. So this is an interesting find from Apple Insider. It seems plausible. Well, it gets a little confusing because today, 9 to 5 Mac, another website that gets like leaks of information about Apple, they're reporting that there's 24 SKUs or models for the new iPad, and so they theorize that either there is going to be 4 different variants. Well, the SKUs have different variants: P107, P101, P103, P105, and P107, and that makes up 24. So that each variant has, let's see, if there's 4 models, there's 6, and the 6 would correspond to 3 sizes, and what else? 3 sizes and 2 colors, black and white. But they also speculate that maybe instead of 4 iPad mini models, that 2 of them are updated iPad 3s with Lightning connectors. There had been a rumor that the iPad is eventually going to get connectors like the iPhone 5, these lightning connectors instead of the traditional 30-pin USB. And so there had been some rumor that the iPad third generation will get like a halfway through the year update just for the connector. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case, and I don't think that they're going to have only 2 iPad third generation updated, because there's actually there's 12 models of iPads, so of third generation. So look, I do think you could have maybe 4 different models of the iPad mini. Maybe there is going to be an entry-level 8 GB iPad, but maybe the sizes go from 8 GB to 16 GB to 32 GB to 64 GB. That would sort of justify the 4 models, and then let's say each of those 4 models come in black and white, and then each of them either come with Wi-Fi or cell phone data. That might take you to 24 models. But this is kind of intriguing that there's 24 models of iPads, whether they're iPad minis or whether they're a combination of iPad minis or an updated iPad third generation with this lightning connector. So we'll have to see. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of combination they come out with. Only be bad timing for Microsoft. Earlier today, as reported by theverge.com, Microsoft released availability for pre-order and pricing for its Surface tablet, which will start shipping on October 26th, which is just 3 days after Apple's iPad mini event. And let's see. So basically, the introductory price of the lowest end Surface tablet is going to have, I think, a hard time competing with Apple, because the entry price Surface RT is starting at $499, which is the entry price of the iPad 3. Now, the entry price of the Surface RT comes with 32 gigabytes, while Apple's comes with 16 gigabytes. So Apple's 32 gigabyte iPad costs $599. So to some extent, Microsoft is underpricing Apple. But I mean, I don't know if a lot of consumers are going to focus on that. I think they're going to look at it as like Apple has an entry-level iPad at $499 and Microsoft has one at $499, and who are you going to go with? The one that is the market leader, and you know there's a lot of apps and stuff to run on it, or are you going to go with Microsoft Windows RT, where you know that there's not a huge market? And also the heralded touch cover, where you can type on the case, that costs an additional $100. So if you want that, then the bundle is $599. This is according to theverge.com. Separately, I guess the touch cover costs $119, and the tactile type cover is $129. So you can apparently pre-order it on their website if you want. I guess you could start pre-ordering it now. So I think it's unfortunate timing for Microsoft, because Apple's iPad event is going to be on the 23rd, and obviously the iPod Touch is going to be, a big, the iPad mini is going to be a big event, and Microsoft is, going to try to get people interested in their Surface tablet. So, we're seeing tablets just sort of dominating and taking over, and Apple has now competitors who are trying to enter the space. So it should be very, very interesting in the coming weeks and months. Now, it seems that a lot of people are considering trading in their larger iPad for one of these iPad minis that are coming down the pipe. VentureBeat had an article out on October 11th entitled iPad Trade-ins Up 80% as the Mini's Maybe Arrival Looms Near. Now we know the iPad Mini is going to be very near. And so the article basically says that a trade-in service like Gazelle has reported that it's seeing an 80% increase in iPads in the last month. So the article says, in other words, iDevice owners are prepping for the seemingly inevitable launch of the iPad mini. And they quote somebody from Gazelle saying people are definitely interested in a mid-sized tablet from Apple. And Gazelle's Anthony Scaracella said, trade-ins doubled on the 16th of last month and volumes have stayed high since. So, Scarella says that Gazelle says also that half of the iPads the company has received were original 16 gigabyte Wi-Fi models. And it says here Gazelle pays about $130 for those models, but will pay $500 for 64 gigabyte iPad 3 models. So, in some ways it's self-serving for Gazelle to say this because they're in the business of trade-ins, and that's how they make money. They basically pay you a certain amount, and then they sell that used iPad or iPhone or other device for a higher price to someone else. And the guy from Gazelle said, over the years, the surge has moved up. We used to see a big jump just on an announcement day. Now consumers are definitely more aware of when products are coming and staying on top of rumors. This guy at Gazelle said he expects Apple to come in at a $299 price point. And what else does it say here? So he says iPads don't get lugged around as much as phones, and more people protect them with cases. So he says that a lot of iPads are in flawless condition. He says where most phones come in to Gazelle in decent shape, with 7 out of 10 in good condition, a full 9 out of 10 iPads are in flawless condition, according to Scarcella. So, actually, I have 2 iPads, a second generation one and a third generation one, and they're both dinged a little bit on the side, the metal. So mine aren't flawless. Are you going to trade in your iPad for an iPad mini? Now, I'm thinking of trading in. We have an iPad 2, and we have a third generation iPad, and I'm thinking of trading in the second generation iPad, which the kids use a lot, and getting an iPad mini, which they can use because it's easier to use. So it's going to be interesting. I do think a lot of people are going to have combinations. I think some people are going to have both an iPad mini and a regular iPad, and I think a lot of people are going to be trading in a second or third iPad that they have for a iPad mini. So I do think that we're going to see a little bump in the trading in when the iPad mini is announced. Now, as I mentioned, there had been some speculation by websites like Business Insider that Apple may update the regular third generation iPad so that it has the new Lightning connector. And I don't know if, I'm sort of debating with myself if that makes sense. On one hand, that may upset people who recently bought the third generation iPad that they have a new plug, or there's a new model with a new plug. So part of me thinks that the Apple wouldn't do that just because, it doesn't want to quickly update a model that would, upset people who just bought it. And I do think Apple would stick on a regular yearly cycle. So it would make sense for Apple to update the iPad, the big full iPad, to the Lightning connector the next time it does a full upgrade. On the other hand, it is trying to get more and more people to use the new Lightning connector, and so the quicker it rolls it out, the quicker that transition will be. So maybe it does make sense to start manufacturing things like the anything that took the old 30 USB dock connector to have the new Lightning connector. So I do think it's possible. So Business Insider says that information comes from The Guardian, another newspaper. And Business Insider says this isn't the first report that Apple plans to change the dock connector on the iPad. Apparently, Renee Ritchie of iMore reported several weeks ago that Apple would announce it's adding the Lightning dock connector to the iPad at the iPhone 5 event. Now, Rene Ritchie, he's usually got a lot of good sources at Apple, and he's someone I sort of respect, so he might be right. They might be doing that. Personally, I like the new Lightning connector. I like the fact that if you flip it over, you can still plug it in. The old USB dock, a certain side of it had to always be up, otherwise it wouldn't plug in, and I like the fact that it's really small. I don't like the fact that you have to get adapters, and it might not work with newer third-party devices. But that's that's one of the issues with progress. There's always going to be modifications and changes. So we'll have to see if Apple does update the regular iPad to have the Lightning connector. Now, one of the interesting things about Apple and its competition in the tablet space is that its competitors have a hard time making a profit. The BBC reported, I guess on October 11th recently, that Jeff Bezos of Amazon admitted that the Kindle does not make a profit for Amazon. And it says here that Amazon boss Jeff Bezos discusses the Kindle Fire HD, and he's quoted as saying to the BBC, quote, "We sell the hardware at our cost, so it is break even on the hardware." And they say this is in stark contrast to the strategy of best-selling tablet Apple. And let's see. So this is a kind of a huge admission from from Jeff Bezos, and I really think that they're they're a little nuts over there at Amazon. He said, quote, "We want to make money when people use our devices, not when people buy our devices." Now the problem with that is this: Apple's been in the business of selling digital content like music and apps and stuff like that. And Apple takes of the app market 30%, and I think they've sold like $5 billion worth of apps, and so developers have gotten $5 billion or whatever. And but the thing is, that's not Apple's main profit area. Apple makes very little money in terms of its overall profit from selling digital content, and Apple's been, probably has the majority of digital music sales, yet Apple doesn't consider music sales to be that significant profit area for Apple. So Amazon, I think, is a little crazy to really think that, it's just going to sell these hardware devices at cost and somehow make a decent profit selling digital books or digital music, because after all, Amazon, doesn't make digital books. It doesn't make digital music. It's having other, producers sell that through Amazon. So Amazon's just making a small margin on the digital stuff. So how much money can it make? And historically, Amazon barely makes any profit. It has huge revenue, but revenue is not profit. Revenue is just how much money's coming in. Profit is revenue minus expenses. And, Apple has the luxury of making significant profit on the iPad. So look, if you're a consumer, think about it, because if you're with if you buy a Kindle and Amazon's barely making any money on the Kindle, how assured are you that in the future Amazon's going to be able to really upgrade and put in research to make a really great Kindle to keep up with the iPad? And the thing is, if you buy all this content that only works on the Kindle, what are you going to do in terms of, like, if you then leave and go to the iPad? So I think for consumers, it's not always the best thing to go for the cheapest device, because you can be penny wise and pound foolish. You can get the cheapest computer, but look, Apple gives you a very good computer with a lot of free software. And with the iPad, you just have, all these choices of apps that you're not going to get on the Kindle or some other tablet. So I think it's a very stark admission by Jeff Bezos. Now, the next story is a bit ironic because, Apple's been suing, obviously, places like Samsung for violating its intellectual property or patents. And there was a little minor issue where maybe Apple copied somebody's intellectual property. And I don't know if you recall when iOS 6 was released, on the iPad finally got an iPad clock, because for many years the iPad, unlike the iPhone, didn't have a sort of an Apple-issued clock, or let's say even an Apple-issued calculator. But we finally got a clock on the iPad, and it's kind of groovy looking. It's I don't know, sort of a Bauhaus or retro design. And people notice that it looks a lot like the Swiss National Railways clock, that it's very similar in design. So word has come now from the Verge.com and other sites that Apple has licensed the clock design from the Swiss National Railway, the SBBB. And there was a spokesperson for the SBB said that that an agreement has been reached, and they've signed a licensing agreement, and that neither company is disclosing how much the agreement is costing Apple. So Apple probably threw some dollars to the Swiss railway. I wonder how much. They probably license the clock to other people, so I'm sure it's not a huge fee. But Apple's not litigating with them. Apple's just properly licensing them. So kudos to Apple, because they do recognize that if they're copying someone's intellectual property, they're willing to license it and pay for it. So, they're a good citizen, a good corporate citizen. Okay, so we know that the iPad is doing well in the enterprise, and we keep seeing interesting ways that it's being used. And the latest interesting way is a story from Fox News that came out on October 12th, entitled "McDonald's Testing Complimentary iPad Use." And Fox News reported that a McDonald's in Virginia Beach is in the news after starting to offer free use of an iPad last week to its eat-in customers. And it says that's not the only place you'll find complimentary iPad use. It says if you're in need of a mobile fix, look around the next time you're at an airport or hotel. But the interesting thing is that it's going to be used at a McDonald's. People are eating food at McDonald's, and it gets kind of messy. So is there an issue with, food getting on top of the screen of the iPad, and then other people coming and using it and having Big Mac special sauce on the screen of the iPad? So I just wonder how that works in a fast food place. Does it make sense, or is somebody going to come around and wipe it regularly? So I do think we are seeing the iPad used left and right, and I think the more enterprise places that use the iPad, the more others will, because it becomes sort of like a standard, and then there's sort of standard software that will help the enterprise use it as like a kiosk or as like a dedicated browser device at like a restaurant. So I think we're going to see more of this, and this is just one McDonald's, but I wonder if you're going to see a lot of fast food places starting to use iPads for its customers. So it's been long rumored that Microsoft, in addition to launching the Surface tablet, will one day release all the Office apps or programs to the iPad. After all, the iPad is dominating the tablet market. And wow, there's 100 million iPads out there, so that's a huge market. Now, the Verge.com reported on October 10th that there's been, a leak, and Office for iOS and Android is reportedly confirmed by a Microsoft product manager, and that it's coming out in March 2013. And The Verge reported that Microsoft product manager Peter Bobeck confirmed that the software maker is planning to release native iOS and Android versions of Office 2013 next year. He was speaking at a press event in Czech Republic earlier that day, and he told, I guess, a Czech site that native apps will be made available from March 2013. And apparently a press release that the Verge saw confirms the availability for iOS and Android in addition to Windows. So maybe Microsoft wants to give the Surface tablets a head start with the Office programs, and then in the spring, maybe with the launch of the next generation iPad, maybe Microsoft's going to launch the full version of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint on the iPad. So maybe that's what Microsoft's strategy is. I mean, frankly, once those products are on the tablet, then Apple is really going to just completely win over the enterprise market, because the enterprise market, big corporations, big government agencies, they all use Microsoft Office on Windows. And, you know, a lot of people probably thinking, oh, how can I switch my productivity from Microsoft Office and Windows to the iPad? And once you give them Microsoft products on the iPad, then it's going to make it easier to switch. So hopefully that'll come true, because I think a lot of iPad owners want Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint and Excel on the iPad. Speaking of the enterprise, here's another way the enterprise is going to be using the iPad. The big coupon or discount internet enterprise called Groupon. According to Bloomberg Business Week, Groupon is unveiling an iPad app for merchants as daily deal demand ebbs. And the article by Bloomberg says that Groupon began offering an application for the iPad that lets merchants track purchases, part of a push by the Daily Deal company to add a new line of sales to make up for slowing growth in online coupons. It says here that the software is called Breadcrumb and is available to merchants in the United States for monthly subscriptions starting at $99. This was said by Groupon Vice President Mihra Shah. So it says here it had previously offered this application to a select group of local businesses in New York, and Groupon is seeking to expand beyond daily deals by building a suite of merchant-focused technology tools that include a credit card payment service and a reservation booking site. And it says that Breadcrumb, a New York-based startup acquired by Groupon, specializes in technology that could help its new owner compete with such payment service providers as Square, Inc. And it goes on to say that Shah said in an interview, "We want to be the one-stop shop to help merchants grow and run their business." And it says that this Breadcrumb application is also targeted toward restaurants and bars, which need features such as menu adjustments, check splitting, and managing employee time clocks. And so it says here that this app will work in conjunction with Groupon Payments, the credit card reading service unveiled last month to record transactions through merchants using One. So basically, here's another enterprise use for the iPad. That it's not for the customer; it's for the merchant who uses the Groupon service to attract customers to better handle its business through Groupon. So I think we're going to see more and more things like that in the enterprise. Okay, so one of the things we've seen sort of regularly come out on the iPad are different types of browsers. And the latest browser, and I've downloaded it, and it's kind of interesting for browsing content on the internet, is something called RockMelt for iPad. And basically, it's supposed to be like a different way to browse content on the internet and stuff that you're interested in. And it's kind of interesting. It's you can I guess hook it up to your social networks and get content from there, and it's free. And it it has like these different tiles sort of coming in and out, and you can sort of pin your favorite tiles to the right side. And I've played around with it, and I do recommend you try it out. It's free. It's called RockMelt, not Rocket Melt. I'm sorry, RockMelt. And, it's free, so check it out. Again, it's one of these sort of, it's sort of like Flipboard, but not really like Flipboard. I mean, it sort of has like these tiles of different pages, and you can also select subject matter on the left bar. Like if you're particularly interested in technology or sports, you can quickly see a whole bunch of relevant content. So it's, it's a different way to see content from the internet on your iPad. It's called RockMelt, RockMelt. Now, one app that it hasn't been released yet, but that looks really interesting and is going to be helpful to a lot of people, is something called Lek Diagram, L-E-K-H Diagram. And I learned about this from a guy I follow on Twitter named Counter Notions. He's a great, very interesting person to follow on Twitter. And it's from a website called avabodh.com, A-V-A-B-O-D-H.com. So basically it says that Lek Diagram is a sketch recognition diagram drawing app which enables you to draw diagrams easily and quickly on tablet devices, and it's going to be soon released for the iPad. And I guess if you go to that website, you can sort of register to get notified. And it explains on the website why this is going to be a better diagramming, sketching app. And it says, the iPad and other similar touch devices are great for reading and browsing. These devices also provide multi-touch gestures for input, which makes you feel much more natural way of interacting with devices than using keyboard and mouse. Despite of such great multi-touch gestures, drawing diagram on these devices are painful. This is primarily because your finger is much thicker than a mouse pointer. When you draw using finger or moving any shape, you lose the precision that you get with a mouse pointer. Your finger covers a large area beneath it, which you cannot accurately place, and the screen of such devices are relatively small, which makes using a toolbox to select a shape and dropping it on a drawing canvas painful. So it says here that Lek Diagram app, when it comes out, will solve these problems, and it says here's how. It's going to have something known as shape recognition, which it describes as a shape recognition engine. It says you're going to be able to draw a rough shape using your finger, and Lek Diagram will recognize the shape. In other words, you can make a rough, it shows here in the description, you can make a rough line, but then it will recognize it's a straight line and turn it into a straight line. You can make a rough right angle, lines, and it'll turn it into a nice right angle lines. You can make a triangle rough, and it'll make it a triangle. So that's kind of interesting that, if you make a star, it'll make it a perfect star. Then also it's going to allow you to regularize shapes. It says to make shape more regular, select the shape by tapping on them and then tap on the menu button shown on selection rectangle. So there's going to be all sorts of selection rectangles, I guess, near the shape that allow you to do things like to curve it, to expand it, to delete it. And then it's going to have something that's going to allow you to connect shapes. So, you can connect shapes. And then also it's going to have a function that's going to allow you to drawing and erasing arrows. It says use simple touch gesture. You can draw arrow or erase arrow at the end of the points of lines, polylines, and curves. So it seems like a very powerful way to create shapes and connect them and draw them. That's, is going to fill in some of the problems you have with like a regular drawing app. It says here, you're also going to have the ability to customize shapes by moving vertex and the control points. It says here, the Lek Diagram provides a powerful way of vertex control point editing. You can modify, customize any shape by moving the vertex or control points of shapes, and it makes you do this very precisely using a vertex handle. And it says the vertex and control points are shown as dots on shapes. tap on any vertex or control point to get the vertex handle, and then you pull it, and you can sort of quickly, like for example in this diagram, quickly transform a triangle and pull it. And also you can customize other shapes that way. What else? It says the LEC diagram also allows scaling and rotating of shapes and aligning of shapes and adding of tapes and miscellaneous features, including inserting image from your photo album, undoing and redoing, deleting, cloning shapes, picking stroke and fill color, setting stroke, exporting to email, selecting font. So it looks like a very powerful tool for making charts or diagramming. And look, I mean, I think it's something to look out for. It isn't released yet. It's called the LEC diagram, and it looks very interesting. So there's a good chance I'll buy, or if it's free, download this app when it comes out. So check it out. It's called it's spelled LEKH diagram, the LEC diagram. Okay, so one of the most prominent literary publications, the Paris Review, has its own app now, and basically came out, I guess, around October 8th. And they announced that they launched an iPad and iPhone app. And it says if you download the app by October 21st, you'll receive the current issue along with an archival issue from spring 1958 featuring an interview with Ernest Hemingway, earlier fiction by Philip Roth, and a portfolio by Alberto Giacometti for free. And it says for current print subscribers, stay tuned, you'll be granted digital access to any issue covered by your print subscription. And so basically, it's a subscription app. So basically you download the app for free, but then there's a cost to get the content. So a 1-year subscription is $29.99. Ask the Paris Review is $2.99. 7 Discoveries $4.99. 5 Object Lessons $4.99. So basically it's $30 a year, but it's a very prominent literary magazine. So I think we see this movement of content going to the iPad, and the Paris Review is the latest one to go for that. So you might want to check it out if you're into good reading. Now, another app that just came out is an app that came out from the developer of Instapaper, Marco Arment, and for, I guess, weeks now, he's been hinting that he's developing a new app, and a lot of people were speculating what that app would be. And it turns out that the app is a newspaper stand magazine app that's going to deliver stories. And I downloaded it, and it's called The Magazine, and I forget what the subtitle is, but if you do a search in the App Store for The Magazine and Marco Arment, A-R-M-E-N-T, you'll find the app. And basically the app is free, and if you'll only be able to see the forward unless you sign up for the subscription. It's in a newsstand, so it's a newsstand app, which means it can get automatic updates and recurring subscription. And the way it works is you sign up through your iTunes account for the subscription, and you get 7 days for free, which means you get access to the 4 stories that are in there in addition to the introduction. And then after that, it's $1.99 a month. So I think you're talking about $24 a year for this content, or $2 a month. And you can cancel by going into your iTunes account. You'll see if you log into your iTunes account, you can cancel any subscription. Now, I personally, I like our Marco Arment, and I love Instapaper, but I just don't think it's worth $2 a month. You get 4 articles. The first 4 articles are what are they? They're one by Guy English called Fireballed, where he talks about the way, you know, people link to stories and comment to them on the internet. Another one called Baseball Misfits by Jason Snell, who's the editor of, I guess, Macworld. And Alex Payne, who talks about, I guess, his breakup and, you know, being in technology and what his breakup with his wife or girlfriend was like. And Stables and Volatiles about how in tech companies there's two types of people who seem to work there. Now, these articles were nice, but I think the plan here is with the magazine for Marco Arment to, you know, pick the stories, pay the people who write them, and charge $2 a month to the readers, and basically have 4 news stories every 2 weeks. So you'd get about 8 stories every month, and they're not long stories. They're, you know, maybe 1,000 words. But the thing is, you know, you can get so much more content for free through the internet and then put it in your Instapaper app. So I don't know, you know, if these stories are so compelling that I want to pay $24 a year for them. And also, the people who write these stories then can make them available after some period of time on their website. So I don't know if this is really a viable model. I don't think for $2 a month, I don't think you're getting enough content. Now, in the olden days, when there wasn't the internet, I would say, hey, $24 a year for 8 stories a month isn't bad. But we're not in the olden days. We're with the internet now, and there's so much free content. If you just get the free Flipboard app, you get stories after stories from all sorts of sites. And there's so many ways to get free, in-depth stories from great writers from, you know, The Atlantic or whatever. So I'm just scratching my head as to why Marco Arment is going this route. It just seems counterintuitive. And if he's going to charge $2 a month, I think he should really have more than 8 stories and have them be longer. And with this app, none of the stories, I mean, it's nice. There's just simple, you know, hypertext, but there's no pictures and there's no videos. It's just straight text, which I guess is part of the selling point. So you might want to check it out. It's the first issue is dated October 11th, 2012. It's definitely well designed, but I'm just sort of scratching my head as to, does it make sense for anybody to pay $24 a year for this content? It's good content, but it's just in internet, you know, money. It's not. Are you really getting $24 worth? Okay, so one thing that the iPad has been used for a lot is music making, and the latest sort of interesting music making app comes from famed Brian Eno, and he's got an app called Scape, and it's described as a new ambient music creation app which is now available on the iPad, made by super producer Brian Eno. And let's see, you know, and it's how much does it cost? It costs $5.99. So basically it lets you generate ambient music with Eno's own sounds on a colorful, what's described as a conceptual interface. And instead of standard beats and loops, each sound is tied to a series of rules, including the time of the day, which ensures that your tunes are never the same twice. So it's sort of a, you know, very abstract kind of way to create ambient music from Brian Eno. So, you know, it's a pretty cool concept. There's a lot of, let's see, what does it look like? There's I don't know, there's like colorful tiles and abstractions on it, and basically I guess you move that around to create different ambient sounds. So check it out. It's $5.99 from the incomparable Brian Eno, and it's just a different way to sort of experiment and create interesting sounds. Now, unfortunately, one of the things that's sort of prevalent or is happening more and more with the iPad is that people are getting scammed, either buying the iPad or having it stolen from them. The New York Daily News had a story on the 12th of October entitled "iScam: Texas Teen's Birthday Ruined When iPad Box Found to Contain Stack of Notebooks." And the article says that a Texas teen thought her parents were playing a birthday practical joke when she opened up the box for a brand new iPad, instead found a stack of notebooks inside. And apparently at the local Walmart there near Houston, this young girl was the victim of another shopper's scam. So apparently her mom planned to buy the $400 device as a birthday present for her. Instead, she found the box contained Walmart notepads instead of the iPad. And the girl thought that her mom had played a joke on her, and the mom said, "Oh my gosh, we've got to get Walmart right away." And they were very upset also because the dad has cancer, and the family had to stretch their budget to buy the device. Apparently, the Walmart manager initially gave them a hard time, according to this story from the Daily News, saying that there was no way the notebooks could have ended up in the factory-sealed box. But later, after an investigation, they discovered that someone had bought the iPad near the Walmart and then swapped the notebooks for the iPad, then rewrapped the box and returned it to the store. So, and then I guess Walmart resold it. But I'm wondering, because aren't these iPads sealed in plastic? So I wonder if Walmart, if Walmart sealed it when they shouldn't have. So, anyways, and the bottom line is she did end up getting them an iPad for free for all the trouble they went through, and they refunded the family's money. So there's a happy story. But the point is, there are a lot of these scams going on where people buy the iPad and then try to return it by putting stuff in it. I just find it weird that they could return it, because if you return it to Apple, they actually look at the iPad. So the box would be opened unless they found a way to seal the box. That would be interesting. So maybe that's what the people did. They found a way to seal it to make it look like it was still sealed. But even then, I think Apple seals it pretty carefully. Okay, so that's it for episode 112 of the iPad podcast. Thanks for listening. This is Lex at Mac's Future, and we'll try to get back on track next week, and hopefully by then we'll have the iPad mini or descriptions of it or visuals of it to discuss. So see you next week. Take care.
This has been a Mac's Future production.